I said I was not going to do this, but I did it.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Oh, yeah.
Welcome everyone, Kyle Erickson here. So a few weeks back when there were rumors of a next-gen Mac Mini coming out, I was on this channel saying, I think I can wait for a next-gen Mac Mini. I've already got an M1 MacBook Air, so I think I can just get by with that for the time being. Wrong, I couldn't help myself. I decided a few weeks ago to switch my video editing workflow over to Final Cut Pro, so the last few videos I've been slowly getting acclimated to that working on my laptop. And as I kinda got into it, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to live in a world with a dedicated M1 for video editing? Don't get me wrong, the M1 Air is a beast, but I love having a desktop setup where everything just seems a little bit more like a permanent workstation and a little bit less temporary. For productivity, you still can't beat having a nice desktop setup with a dedicated workspace. Back in 2005, when the Mini was first launched, they were billed as the most affordable Mac ever, and I think that holds true with the M1 Mini, and it's one of the main reasons why I picked this up. With the base model coming in at $699, this is an insanely affordable way to get into an M1. I know a lot of creators and software developers who are using $5,000 to $6,000 machines. They were replacing them with these machines. For myself, I was looking at my desktop PC I had just built a few months ago. You may have seen it in the background of some of my videos. And I was thinking, I could just sell this thing and grab an M1 Mac Mini and still have enough to buy Final Cut Pro. And that's exactly what I did. Things haven't changed much over the years when it comes to Mac Mini. They still resemble those old 2005 models, just with a bit of a haircut. They look just like the previous few generations, the same sleek design and the square with the rounded corners and sharp edges. The Mini stands 1.4 inches tall and takes up a surface area of 7.7 inches by 7.7 inches and weighs in at 2.6 pounds. So perfect for freeing up some desk space, especially if you don't have much space to work with. You have less need for cables with built-in wireless connectivity, which I'll touch on in a few minutes. And I just like the idea of not having to have a tower or a laptop stand taking up a bunch of space and making room for other things, whether they be decorative or functional. This model is silver, where the previous version was space gray. I would have liked the option to have a space gray model here, but this is fine. It's a nice neutral color. That, coupled with the small form factor, gives it a nice, sleek, inconspicuous design. The body is made from 100% recycled aluminum, so that's great if you're environmentally conscious. Even on the inside of the machine, 100% of the solder on the main logic board is recycled tin, and at least 35% of the plastic on the components is recycled as well. Looking at the back of the machine at the ports, you have a power connector that has no external brick. There's just a cord, which is a huge plus. There is a gigabit Ethernet port for a wired connection, which is upgradable to 10 gigabit if you so desire. You have one HDMI 2.0 port that can run one monitor up to 4K resolution at 60 Hz, two Thunderbolt 3 USB-C connectors, where you can also connect one other display up to 6K resolution at 60 Hz. These two USB-C connectors are also USB 4 compatible, which isn't something super common at the moment, but it's kind of nice to have something that's somewhat future-proof for when it does become more popular. And they can also do USB 3.1 Gen 2, or as it's now called, USB 3.2. There are two USB 3.0 USB-A ports and a headphone jack. Looking at the ports as a whole, I think these are one of the bigger disappointments on the Mac Mini. The specs, they're totally fine. Thunderbolt 3, check. USB 4, check. But it's just the lack of ports. If you want to connect two monitors, it leaves you with just one USB-C and two USB-A ports. And if you want to have any devices connected that aren't Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, those ports get filled up really quick. If you're relying on any external storage at all, or if you're transferring data over with an SD card reader, which it also might have been nice to have built in, you will need a USB hub. I'm using USB speakers and I occasionally plug in my keyboard to charge it, so that really doesn't leave me much space for anything else. It also would have been nice if they could have just stuck with the same ports that were on the 2018 Mac Mini, where there were 4 USB-C and 2 USB-A. I think that would have given people enough options to the point where they wouldn't have to consider using a hub. But what makes up for the inconvenience of lack of ports is just how well this performs. This is running the M1 processor, which contains an 8-core CPU and 8-core GPU on the same chip, and that runs at 3.2 GHz. It's built on a 5nm process, which I think is a pretty big deal that you don't hear about a lot. Currently, all the latest Intel chips run on a 13nm process, meaning that everything that makes up their processors contains larger pieces. Apple can pack in way more transistors and parts into their processors, which in turn creates a higher performing, denser chip. If you look at the benchmarks out there for what you're spending, you're getting a lot more for your dollar out of the M1 chip than any comparable Intel CPU. Another advantage with the M1, and what makes this so performant, is unified memory. What is unified memory? Traditionally, how your computer works when using memory is the CPU has to ask the GPU for something in its memory, and the RAM is split between the GPU and the CPU. With shared memory or unified memory, the CPU doesn't have to ask the GPU for anything because they have access to the same RAM. It can just go get it, and it removes that whole process and makes everything much more performant and power efficient. You do only have 8GB and 16GB RAM options when buying this machine, and it might not seem like a lot on the surface, but from everyone that I've personally talked to, that's never been an issue for them. I did grab the 16GB option, which I'm not sure was even necessary, but I did notice other creators and videographers saying that they were getting close to the 8GB usage limit. So I just upgraded so I wouldn't have any issues down the road. For most people, 8GB seems to perform really well if you don't want to fork out the extra $200 to upgrade. Storage is another thing that upgrades in $200 intervals, where you can choose from 256GB, 512, 1TB and 2TB options. The SSD inside the Mini is very quick. On a Blackmagic disk speed test, it's going to come in at over 2,000 megabytes per second write speed and well over 2,000 on read speed. This is one area where I didn't upgrade, staying at the 256GB option. I just found the upgrade options to be a little bit expensive for what you're getting, and you can save some more money here if you're okay with just using a third-party portable drive, which is exactly what I did. Looking at the performance as a whole, the Mac Mini has lived up to all my expectations. It's really fast. I've never had any issues with lag, resource-heavy tasks like video editing, and it's been way faster in that regard than my PC that I had previously. I've done some light gaming, but I've mostly relegated all my gaming to my PS5 at this point, so this is mainly just a workstation. I find almost all apps at this stage work with Apple Silicon, and even if they don't, you've got Rosetta 2, which allows you to use Intel-based apps on your M1. And it's worked great for me on the few occasions where I have needed it. I'm sure those of you who have watched some of my videos in the past have seen the PC that was in the background. I was using that, editing all my videos in Premiere Pro, and I just built that this winter, and it would struggle at times when I was dealing with edits in 4K, and I started playing around a little bit with Final Cut Pro. It was way better at handling the file types and the codecs that I was using, and just much more performant. After using that for a few weeks, I thought, this is silly, I can just sell this machine, buy a Mac Mini, and it would work way better, take up way less space on my desk. And another huge plus for me was having modern built-in wireless options. You've got Wi-Fi 6 on this machine, which is backwards compatible, of course, if you don't currently have a Wi-Fi 6 router. It's been really solid for me. I haven't had any connection drops. Everything has been really stable. The connection has always been great. This has Bluetooth 5, which has also worked great for me so far. I know that some people early on, right after the Mini was launched, had problems with some Bluetooth devices, but all those seem to have been resolved with a software update. Bluetooth has kind of been a complaint of mine with Apple for a few years since I started to transition all my devices over to Bluetooth. On the Intel machines, I would have things dropping Bluetooth packets. What would happen is, say if you connected a keyboard, mouse, and some headphones, you might notice some key presses not going through or your audio going weird on you. With both of my M1 machines, this has not been an issue. It's just been really nice to have the wireless connectivity built in and not have to worry about it at all and just have it work. On PC, I couldn't really find a decent option that had onboard Bluetooth and Wi-Fi that didn't have an external connection, where you'd have wires connected hanging out and an antenna propped up somewhere. And the last thing that I'll briefly touch on is the audio. This does have a built-in speaker, but it does not sound good. It's nowhere near the same quality as the speakers on a MacBook. The sound is pretty tinny, and I definitely think it's worth picking up some speakers for this. It will also support multi-channel audio output through the HDMI port, but otherwise you can use the headphone jack on the back or use a USB port if you have USB speakers, but I would only use the built-in speakers as a last resort, or if you just don't care about the audio. So when everything is said and done, performance-wise, this has been working flawlessly without any hang-ups so far. For doing anything work-related or anything productive, I think this is definitely hard to beat. For the price, you're just going to get so much more value than most Intel machines out there. It does come with some warts. I can see a lot of people who do pick this up needing a USB hub. It doesn't take that long to fill up all the ports, but luckily this is cheap enough that even spending the extra money on a nice hub isn't even going to come close price-wise to comparable Intel machines. There are other minor things like lack of color choice and the built-in speaker, but I'm really nitpicking with those. If you are looking for a gaming machine, unless it's just super casual usage on the Apple Arcade or something, I'd probably look elsewhere. But if you're looking for an inexpensive machine to do anything else, whether it be creative work or software development or so on, this is a great option. I hope you guys found this review helpful. If you have any questions about this machine that I didn't answer in this video, please leave them down below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button. If you want to see more tech-related content, please subscribe and hit that little bell icon to get notified anytime that I release new videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.